Hello, and welcome to episode 397 of the Crate and Crowbar, a podcast all about gaming. My name is Tom Senior, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jamie Britton.
Hello.
Hello, Jamie.
Hello, how you doing?
Jamie, our listeners will be really familiar with you from our film and telly podcasts and things that we've done before. Am I right in saying this is the first time you've been on one of the sort of big gaming ones?
Yes, it is. It's awesome. I've really enjoyed, podcasting with you guys over the last few months, and so yeah, it's very nice to be asked onto one of these ones.
Yeah, and so we played games together, and I've felt like you've got a really good, interesting perspective on games as well. So I wanted to sort of set the stage by asking you what you enjoy about games, what your favorite games are, and also how you tend to play at the moment, or what your history with games is as well. That's a lot of questions.
it's like it's kind of video games. Kind of always been a passion since I was very young. My parents got me. I had an Amiga A1200, which my dad bought me. I don't know where he got the money from because those things were really expensive and we were not, rich. So he got me one of those, and on that I played games like, lots of demos. You get Amiga Power and get the demos off that.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. And then I loved playing all the Sierra Online adventure games like Space Quest and then all the LucasArts games like Monkey Island. I think Monkey Island 2 came on something like 13 discs. It was just an absolutely logistical nightmare to try and play it. But I mean, what I loved about those games is that they were funny and they were full of really wonderful writing. And for a long time, I think games were kind of about narrative to me and about storytelling. And I was always very sniffy about my friends who were kind of playing things which were a bit more mechanical. I played Final Fantasy VII like everyone else, but I enjoyed it as a kind of mad fantasy, novel rather than I couldn't understand why people got so into all the mechanical stuff and all the kind of what I would probably see as being kind of quite a distasteful amount of numbers and figures and statistics. It's sort of like what a base way of enjoying a game. I was such a tosser back then, and then that kind of continued, and then sort of into my 20s, I realized I always loved, I always had a passion for them, and I used to hang out with some of the PC Zone lots back in the day after meeting them off on the internet and stuff like that. So, I kind of sort of always kind of had a little toe in that world. But when I was in my 20s, I realized that games were kind of just felt really valueless to me. Like I'd buy them, I'd play like half of them, or play a little bit of The Last of Us, or a lot of those like big narrative games, and just sort of find myself feeling really left cold by them. And I was actually listening to sort of when I started to have less time on my hands in my life. So when my little girl was about to be born and stuff like that, was when I was first started listening to this great podcast called the Crate and Crowbar, where they were talking about like games like Spelunky and stuff like that, where you guys were talking about that. And that came along at the same time as sort of getting into Bloodborne as well. And so those two games were pretty foundational for me in kind of reframing how I thought games could be and should be, like rather than these like narrative forms which were about kind of getting story into you, they could be this sort of thing where you kind of create your own stories almost out of these systems and stuff like that. And sort of those two games, I'd say, were the ones that kind of cracked me. And since then, I've just been like, going completely rogue. I play Dwarf Fortress now. I play systems heavy JRPGs. I play all the stuff that I used to kind of really disdain. And there's such like majesty down there. I was an idiot for for swearing off that stuff for so long. Because there's some extraordinary games being made, and particularly in the sort of indie space. That's kind of where I'm at now. I love a roguelike. I love a Souls-like. I love anything which I can plow hundreds of hours into. One of my favorite games of all time is The Binding of Isaac, which I remember seeing years ago when it was first out and just thinking like, what the fuck is this? This doesn't make any sense at all. And like now I've put hundreds and hundreds of hours into it, and I'm just still completely fascinated by it and all that sort of stuff. So just kind of an obsessive nerd who managed to be a bit less of a snob about the whole thing eventually.
No, I do apologise. We did in the early days talk about Spelunky quite a lot, so I hope there isn't a sort of Stockholm syndrome element to you coming around to this systemic roguelike. But I think Binding of Isaac is a great sort of melding of just a really compulsive roguelike game, session game, which also just has interesting dark themes behind it and a real kind of psychology behind it that perhaps for me that fused both of those camps. I would say.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if you play the last expansion that they just put out, Repentance, which is the kind of ending of the Binding of Isaac, it's amazing. Like they round off the story like absolutely beautifully and heartbreakingly as well. Lots of people talk about like
Yeah,
crying at certain sequences in it because it's like. I mean, I don't think Spelunky's made many people cry, at least not for that reason.
no.
But yeah, I mean, it was also listening to Crate and Crowbar over the years and like hearing like you guys talk about something like Mordhau, which is never a game I would have imagined myself playing, But hearing Chris Thurston enthuse about that, it's like, wow, it's like a game where you sort of cut people's heads off and everyone's just screaming at each other and everyone on the chat channel's the worst person in the world. And it's just like, oh, I've definitely got to try that out, So, yeah.
Yeah. So, have you sort of moved into multiplayer games more recently, or was that always a kind of like? Cause I feel like me and you, we played a bunch of Deep Rock Galactic that we'll come on to talk about. But it feels as though you enjoyed like Chivalry and other games like that, like
Yeah,
Mordhau.
yeah. I love. I think like anything like out and out competitive, I'm never really gonna go for. But anything that has a team based element, I think, is really good fun. I always loved the co op game. I always loved Streets of Rage on the Sega and stuff like that. Much more than I enjoyed like Street Fighter or something like that. Something where you can work together. It always seems like you spread the sense of failure over a much larger space. I mean, I remember playing X Wing versus TIE Fighter on dial up internet. It was so good. But the way I played that was with my mate sitting in a chair next to me, and he would like be like diverting shields and moving power around the spaceship while we were playing. So it was a kind of cooperative experience anyway.
Fantastic games.
So yeah, really wonderful, and I've always really enjoyed that experience. And it does feel like, for all the talk of toxicity and horrible players, which I've of course encountered if I ever play like an out and out deathmatch game, but like in a lot of these like co-op focused games, Vermintide or Deep Rock Galactic or Chivalry 2, like the communities are lovely, which is this really like surprising thing. Like I see almost no toxicity in any of those places at any point. It's actually, for all the horrors of the gaming industry, and particularly since Gamergate, there are actually some like open spaces which are still really nice and welcoming to people, which is it's easy to forget, I think, in this time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point actually, and it's something we touched upon when we were playing Deep Rock Galactic together. So it seems sensible to move on to that game, a fantastic co-op game. But also, I've just had tremendous experiences with you and just playing separately with just random players dropping in, being really helpful, and if they don't like your play style, or if you're not good enough, they just leave and they don't they don't just like leave horrible messages for you. It's just it was a lovely experience. So I wonder if you could sort of lay out how you got into it and what you reckon about it.
So my brother-in-law Tom, who recommended it for me when I was just sort of thinking about getting into playing something a bit more co-op-y and a bit, we played a bit of Hunt Showdown, but that's like a really stressful game. So Deep Rock Galactic was something he suggested that he plays for chill. He's got like 700 hours in it, which is insane to me.
Wow.
But yeah, so Deep Rock Galactic is a game where you play a bunch of dwarfs who are going down to this planet to mine a bunch of sort of minerals and various things out of the surface of this planet. It is a co-op game, basically. I think they've described it as like Minecraft and Left 4 Dead sort of smashed together, which is about right, I think.
Yeah.
And it is, based around teamwork. You have different classes of dwarf who do various things. Some have means of transportation, or lights that they can set up, or turrets they can set up, and stuff like that. You've got a whole range of equipment you can bring to bear on this stuff. And then you have a kind of season pass style progression, as well as like upgrading your materials and your equipment and stuff like that. Um, what it does amazingly well, I think, is with a relatively small palette, is give you a kind of wonderful space for expression and
Mm.
teamwork. It's not an enormous game. I mean, it's sort of, in my head, it fits a similar sort of purpose as something like Destiny 2, in that it's a game that you can kind of chase your own goals in and sort of, um, sort of spend time as a sort of hangout space in there as well. But obviously, it doesn't have anything like the budget or something like that. So as I say, the play space is quite small. There are a set of biomes um, and a set of different kind of tasks you have to do. And even though the proc gen levels are often very beautiful, and as my brother-in-law with 600 hours tells me, like still like managed to surprise him, they're not really the star of the show. The star of the show is the experience and the vibe
Mm.
of it, which I just think is so perfectly pitched. You have this kind of drop in, drop out function. Like, I do get kicked from games occasionally, and there's a function on it where you can explain to people why you've kicked them. And like one of the like pre-selected messages is like, "I'm sorry, but I have my reasons." And sometimes that can mean it's like you fucked up too many times in a level. But
Sure.
even that's only happened to me a few times. And even when that happens, it's so easy to find a new game, and so easy to just start again with someone else that it just simply doesn't matter. So
That's a very
yeah,
forgiving. That's a very forgiving reason. I like the language. I think you're right that the space it creates comes from a bunch of just the way that it allows people to express themselves is kind of always polite and inherently um, has a graciousness to it. But which seems silly for a game about dwarves with big beards going into drill spiders. But like even in the kind of social areas where there's like a bar area where you could just have a pint and a random effect will happen to you. You might sort of triple in size, or you might just fall over. And the kind of the playfulness of all of that, and also the playfulness of the default communications that are allowed within the game, do create a really, really consistent tone that I found extremely friendly and definitely has cultivated a good community.
yes, you can just say rock and stone, which is a phrase
Yeah.
which rings out constantly through the game and sort of never gets old, amazingly. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's something about the narrative setup of the whole thing which kind of serves that purpose as well. Like a lot of these games where you're kind of character focused or avatar focused, they might have, I mean, if you think of something like Overwatch, which I know you can't really compare in the completely, but like the way that the characters you're playing that are this like um, diverse set of kind of sexy people, who are all these kind of cross
The shining
section of all these
archetypes,
kind of
aren't they?
all these kind
Yeah.
of and like in DRG, you're just these like you're all fat ugly dwarfs, and you're fat ugly comedy dwarfs on a kind of job.
Who
Um,
desperately want to unionize, but
yeah,
absolutely
that's
cannot.
that's right. And they just kind of they have this kind of attitude about them, which is sort of a mixture of kind of uh, you know weary, pissed offness about their situation, but also just a kind of willingness to go and collect things. They've got kind of I don't know. It's a very unique attitude they have, which is like, oh well, off we go. This is what we're doing now.
Hey
And
ho, hey
again,
ho.
there's something about that. They sort of cheerfully slag each other off. It's got that kind of vibe to it. So there's a little bit of aggression built into it, and
Mm,
a little bit of bants built into it, which means that the players don't have to like bother with that. They can just
mm.
focus on having fun and sort of working together. Um, and yeah, I've been like, I plugged in a whole bunch of hours in the last couple of weeks. Particularly, it's got a new season pass, which is an enjoyable numbers go up type thing, and they got some great guns in there. Like I just unlocked like a big laser cannon thing, which is really good fun to use, and it has a nice and grokkable progression sort of system where you're kind of you promote dwarfs, which basically means you sort of reset their levels, but that gives you more perks for them and stuff like that. Like it's all pretty mechanical that way. But playing on the higher difficulties is insanely. Well, I mean, it's just insane. Like you can play up to sort of level 5, which is a difficulty you have to unlock, and once you're there, it's this really interesting feeling because it suddenly becomes almost. If you're playing on that mode, or you're playing on their deep dives, which they do, which are like a series of very hard missions in a row that you have to do with the same resources, and then it becomes something else. Actually, it becomes really tricky, really teamwork focused, and it has this really interesting feel of like barely keeping everything together, barely keeping everything under control.
Right.
Which, when you're getting it right, is like really exhilarating. So you've got the gunner like laying down fire, you've got the driller making paths through the level, and you've got other dwarfs scouting around and tagging minerals to use and all this sort of stuff. And when it's working together, you're kind of holding back these swarms of bugs that are coming. But what can happen is if one person sort of fucks up at their job or at their their task at hand, it can all go so badly wrong, and you suddenly get these kind of robots flying out of the dark, and they've added all manner of kind of beasts and weird things and weird set piece events and stuff like that. And when they're all popping off in these kind of procedural generated spaces, it can feel like really chaotic in a really like fun way. And even when it all fucks up, you'll often get people in the chat who chat's mostly silent, just kind of laughing. A lot of the attitude you see there is just like, well, that was ridiculous. That huge explodey lava monster came out, and then another one came straight after it, and then that robot janitor guy exploded, and it's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just think it's a really like nice fraternal experience playing that game.
Yeah, it sounds as though they've actually built proper sort of raids into it, like sort of the emotional experience of a raid, even if it might. I think it sounds like the encounters are complex, but probably not as complex as the kind of World of Warcraft or MMO raids. But it sounds as though they require a degree of coordination that elevate them from other normal encounters in similar games. Even
yeah, so I'd agree. It's not too much coordination; it's just the right amount. The possibility space is never so enormous. I played a little bit of Dota and a little bit of LoL, and the complexities of that game are just I'm never gonna get
vast.
them. They're vast, and and all power to them. And even I've played a couple of Destiny raids, and I just don't have the mind for it. I don't have the the reasoning skills to be able to perform the kind of complex series of kind of things that you must do. But like in DRG, well, it's just going to be you're just going to shoot some stuff and you're going to blow some stuff and you're going to get good at running away. And that's a really satisfying thing they've built there, I think.
I really enjoyed the pacing of what we played together, because there were suddenly like intense combat encounters, which were exciting, and but then there were real just nice bits of calm downtime where you sort of mine some rocks off the walls that are a different color and gather them and then put them in your dog bucket robot that follows you everywhere, which is adorable. And that's hilariously, all the bugs of the game just really insult that poor robot who has to follow you everywhere and just sort of carry your stuff. So there are these sort of moments of exciting combat, but then moments that felt like gardening, like just channeling through chunks of rock to try and find better paths, just channeling through to trying to get up to a seam that's glowing on the roof that perhaps I could use my sort of grappling hook to get to, or one of us could set up a line that other people could surf up on this line. I love that mechanic, and it's very, very funny to watch. All of this is just very slapstick and funny to see as well. So if you shoot a kind of a zip line, pretty much anyone could go up it, and they can also fire on enemies while they're slowly going up it. So you get these hilarious 3 zip lines and 3 dwarfs, one in each zip line, facing different directions, firing their guns, and it's just it's hard to capture even in screenshots how funny it is. It's very, very, very funny. But it's also tense. Like in those moments, you're trying to really desperately place that zip line in the right place so that it will help your teammates to get up to that next place. So I found it to be just a really nice contrast of moods even just in a kind of 1 hour session.
Yeah, and it can really pop off as well. Like, like when they have mutators on the level, and one of them is just like, there's going to be lots of explodey little creepy things here that when you shoot them explode, and that can entirely transform a space. One of the things I actually really love about the game is at the end of a mission, particularly a long one where you're like running back to your drop pod, and you look back and you see how much you've transformed this space. You put lines everywhere, your platforms, everything's blown up, and you've kind of completely transformed the kind of landscape of this space in the time you spent there. And I really love that feeling. It's kind of a really unique feeling. And they do this big epic thing where you all run into the escape pod and everyone goes rock and stone, and then you sort of you all blast off into the sky. It's a really kind of fun feeling to do that. It's a really cozy place to spend time, that game, and I'm they're adding to it more and more, and I think it'll be really interesting to see where they take it. You buy the base game and then they haven't done any DLC or anything. They've done some like cosmetic packs and stuff like that. But it's nice to be able to just buy a game and just that's it. You just got the game now, and they're going to keep adding to it for quite a long time, I think.
It's come on so far. So I saw it at preview, like before it was out, and I can't remember if it's in early access, but it's definitely sort of been just layering on development, just kind of progression after progression, and the amount of kind of customization you can apply to your dwarves and the leveling up and the weapons you can unlock and stuff like that has made it just even more moreish. So it's definitely one I'm gonna keep up with.
Some of the things they do really interesting are the kind of mutators that they put on levels. Like often I find those things, just like adding needless challenge. But there's things like there's levels which are oxygen depleted, so you have to.
Oh yes.
You're constantly running out of air, so you have to run back to your molly or your your something or other to reload your air, and that just in theory that could be really tedious, but actually it makes it really fun and frantic and crazy,
Yeah.
And it's clearly, I think, inspired by the underwater bits of Sonic the Hedgehog, just like and like also like just to say, I mean, it's kind of the magic of it's gone a little bit because I've played it so many times, but like the drill dozer levels where you basically are piloting a big underground tank as it chews through the ground. It will stop a couple of times and you have to refuel it by firing these fuel canisters at oil shale on the walls and then refueling them. And then you bring it into a big cavern where there's a heartstone, which is like a big, like encrusted ball, and your drill dozer is going to fire a big laser at it. And then all these kind of crazy orbs are going to come out of the ground and you've got to shoot those, and then waves of enemies are going to come. And you're going to fight those off, and then eventually, you're going to be able to get this heartstone out of the inside of this thing, which then gets strapped to the top of your molly because it's too big to go inside. And like, it's such an amazing like technical exercise. Like, I don't understand anything about anything, but the first time I played it, I was just like, what the fuck is this? This is this like big digger going through this procedural space. Right. And I'm like fending off these enemies. I don't know how they're doing it. It's just this kind of real magic experience. And I think actually the first time I did it solo, and it was just this kind of extraordinary, feeling of like being miles beneath the surface of this planet, kind of pitched against the elements. And yeah, it's really something.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, as you mentioned earlier, like Minecraft is kind of a good touchstone because I think perhaps we haven't exaggerated enough how destructible the environments really are. Like, as far as I could tell, almost everything could be destroyed or changed or drilled or bombed, and it's so these arenas are changing shape all the time. And most of the enemies I've fought in the game are actually wall crawlers or ceiling crawlers, and they are able to navigate that changed scenery. That this is kind of like nerdy stuff that tends to go wrong in other games, but for this, it just absolutely works. I think it's just quite an achievement.
I mean, I guess it must be I mean, they're all basically spiders, which must be part of it, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, that does help, I'm
Like,
sure.
pretty much everything in the game either flies or is a spider, or
Yeah,
quite a lot
that's
of
very
them are
true.
both. But I mean, that does, you do get that, like, they're coming out of the goddamn walls vibe,
Definitely.
many, many times. You got this, like, clipped British announcer who's, faintly above it all, sort of saying, like, oh no, you've got some terrible beasties coming
Enemies
your way,
coming in.
lads.
Mm.
um, but again, he ends up occupying a kind of place in your heart. That guy, because he's kind of he's just sort of this constant companion on these quests.
He makes the best out of every absolutely disastrous employee kind of lawsuit that's about to happen to your poor dwarves.
There's a funny moment I was playing it earlier, and he chimes in often when you're doing your assignments, basically like your bounties in Destiny, and as you go through each stage of them, he'll kind of come on and sort of say, "You're doing well. You're progressing very well to your objective." And today I played it, and he said, "Well done, Miner. You've completed your assignment." Oh no, wait, you haven't. You've still got 2 to go. It really made me laugh because like, oh really? Oh, thank God, I finished it. Oh no, got it. Yeah, no, I just really recommend it. It's such a. I know there's loads of people on the Crate and Crowbar Discord who play it because, for exactly the reasons we talked about. It's just a really good hangout game. Maybe the best hangout game I've played. I can't think of many like that. Like actually, Hunt Showdown had that nice mixture of like downtime and shooty bang times, but it's so like stressful when it's shooty bang times that. And the feeling that you could just be shot at any moment by a real person is just too much to bear, I think.
And also there's the powerful and very effective horror
Yeah.
tropes that are super effective are also obviously by design going to distract you from fun chats with friends and that kind of stuff. So I think this just strikes a really great balance that most other games don't in this genre.
Well, I think it's just. I think they're Scandinavian, the developers, yeah, and like, that sort of part of the world has that kind of culture of sort of coziness and togetherness and kind of I'm sure that's me overstating it massively and is a huge cliche. But I do just kind of really appreciate that there are game devs out there like thinking about this stuff and thinking about like a player like me who's never going to be the most skilled at anything really, and is never going to be able to like grok anything too complicated, but loves to play and loves to kind of be in something chaotic and out of control, and just like making it possible for me to kind of do that. It's just a really nice. It's sort of the same thing that Animal Crossing is to other people.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it's really nice that gamers are being thought about in that way. Rather than a bunch of like barbaric demons,
murderers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the idea that, like, optimistically, I like the idea that games like indie games and lots of games have inspired people to think about gamers not in the to kind of reject the traditional gamer in some ways. Obviously, of course, I mean, I love a bit of Battlefield. I love a bit of Call of Duty occasionally. So I'm supposedly the traditional audience for a lot of the mainstream games. But I love that so many games are finding these audiences who just want to chill out. And there's a lot going on. And it's just really nice to have a game like Deep Rock Galactic where you could just camp out with friends, mine some stuff if you want to. If you want that slightly more intense experience, you can do those almost raid-like challenges. And just increasingly, lots of games are finding that niche. And yes, it's great. I love Animal Crossing as well for similar reasons almost. So it's almost meditative, like the idea of, I'll just dig up some plants and sell them. Sell my parsnips it's Tuesday. I'll sell my parsnips. That's actually just very, very pleasant, and it's a simple pleasure. But
it's a nice
real
mix
one.
of like allowing you to sort of set your own goals, but just giving you enough direction so it doesn't seem aimless.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real like it must be it's a hard thing to get right. And I think in this era of like season passes and all that kind of stuff, it's quite easy to get overloaded with these things or feel like you have to do too much, and Destiny's very guilty of this. But like in DRG, the season pass is just another computer in the base, and you go up to it and you collect your little tokens from it, and that's it. And it's a little hit of endorphin, but not too big, not so much that you feel like you have to constantly be on it. I haven't checked out that machine for a while, I'm going to have a look at it. It's great in that way, I think.
Yeah, I've bounced hugely off Destiny last year, and which is probably a topic for another time. But especially because I'd like to hear from like Chris and other people who've continued to engage with it, but it just became an absolute nightmare of interlaced objectives, and it became very difficult to find what the fun part was for me. So
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I this was the first, the most recent Destiny expansion was the first one I didn't buy, um, which is, I felt a little bit of sadness about, because it's, uh, I always enjoy, you always get a good amount of fun out of those things. But I just knew from experience that it wasn't going to be quite enough to justify, the cost. And also, they've been like taking the piss with the amount of money they've been charging
yeah,
for some of their like content, I think. And it's, with limited funds, it's kind of, I just thought, no, I can spend that same money on a bunch of like, cutesy or indie games, roguelikes probably, which have, lots of replayability and stuff like that. Whereas Destiny, there's always a moment where I'm just like, because I sort of want it to be my forever game, because
mm,
I love a lot about it, but there's always a point where it just stops being fun and starts being a chore. And I wish that didn't happen, but it does. Um,
yeah. I think a lot of the sort of onboarding is a massive mess. Where I've been sort of guided into modes where my character was massively underleveled, and it was difficult to see how or why to I could achieve the arena kind of goal, arena mode that they wanted me to do. And then I realised, oh, that's the thing you're supposed to do after you've completed X arc, and you've probably leveled up this weird part of your character. It's just gotten out of control for me. But then that's just because I'm sure if I put the time in, I used to love that game so much. Some of my favorite multiplayer, competitive and co-op experiences have been with Destiny 1 and 2. So I feel kind of like sad that I've lost it in a way, because it's just given how much obviously I love games, and they are a part of my life and career. Um, for that sort of like disappear, but I think I've done with it, which is
yeah,
interesting.
I mean, I hope to go back to it eventually.
Mm.
I've sworn off it before, and then kind of, just when I'm out, they pull me back in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's true. Me too.
I do love that it exists, because it's completely mad, and the fact that it's so huge and ungainly that they keep having to cut bits off it and
That's it.
store them
Yeah,
for a rainy day, and kind of
yeah, yeah.
piss off a bunch of people, and and then make another bunch of people really happy that they don't have to do a certain thing again. I mean, like, I appreciate that it exists. I feel good for the like ultra fans of it, because I just think they must have the absolute time of their life in that game. If
Yeah,
you can commit to it in the way it wants you to commit to it, you must just be like absolutely flying free with that stuff. But
and
I
it is.
think for most people, it is a little bit hard to kind of play at that level. It's just too
It's, I
much.
think it's hard to pass. It's still undoubtedly just an immense shooter. I can't fault how good it feels to play on both pad on a PlayStation and on PC.
Yeah.
Both feel incredible. So I mean, Bungie are masters, no doubt, no doubt that they've got like immense skills, and they know how to make things feel amazing and know how to make amazing games. I think it's just the ecosystem of it, which is weird that we talk so much these days about games ecosystems and whether they're worthwhile. And I feel as though that's one of the nice things about Deep Rock Galactic, is that it's quite a light touch ecosystem. There's definitely lots of progression there, but there's no season pass. There's no insistence to constantly get the better thing. You just play, have fun, hang out, and yeah, I like that. I like that level of engagement.
Yes. And okay, I guess when Destiny's at its best, like when you're playing through some of their like new campaign content, you're like, this is like the amount of like care and love
Oh
and
yeah,
attention to detail that's gone into this location they've built. This is in no way procedural. This is like
that's beautiful.
a master class in design, stuff like that. And that obviously costs money, and that obviously costs time. And I guess they'll come a point where they can sort of really integrate that kind of your investment with the experience, because I think it's sometimes a little bit hard to kind of see where your money's going, and you can't see the wood for the trees. Because when it's popping, I played the Beyond Light expansion, and
Mm.
Europa, just like what an extraordinary location.
incredible. It
It's
is,
just
yeah.
amazing. Those sandstorms, those like snowstorms that blow in, and everyone, those kind of encountering sort of crazy robot monsters through the mist. It's just great. It's no one can do anything like to that degree, really, like they can.
Yeah, you're right. I love how I was insistent that I wouldn't complain about Destiny or talk about Destiny, and then talked about it for 10 minutes. So apologies to everyone.
I will say, I mean, I know you guys aren't doing news anymore, but like Bungie kind of coming out very vocally in the last couple of weeks about the terrible stuff that's going on there with the Roe v. Wade stuff, and just sort of
Oh yeah, of course.
Bungie saying
It's good to see that.
saying fuck it to sort of Sony, who've been incredibly mealy mouthed to say the least, and Bungie going, we don't agree with this. I thought was very admirable.
I agree, absolutely.
What have you been playing, Tom?
So I have been playing a deeply silly game, perhaps even a sillier game than the dwarf game we just talked about. I've been playing Injustice 2, a beat 'em up based on the DC universe from NetherRealms. I love their fighters that they do also, or the modern Mortal Kombat games. They're exceptional single player experiences, just for having just incredibly intricate single player campaigns with hours and hours of cutscenes and voice acting and every character. So at the start of every fight in a beat 'em up, the two characters face off, and in this game, almost every character has a specific riposte to the particular character they're facing off against. It's a bit like, speaking of Monkey Island, the fencing game, where the skill isn't in the fencing; it's in the actual, the retort that you get.
Trash talk, yeah.
The trash talk. Like every character has a retort for every other character in the game, and there are dozens of characters. And the sheer amount of just work and stuff that's gone into it is, to me, wild for something that's so enjoyably stupid. And I've greatly enjoyed it. First of all, these games are actually I find them to be really sharp and exciting fighters. They're technically very, very good, and they're they require a lot of snap reactions that I, as an increasingly old man, cannot really quite do. But there's still plenty there to enjoy as a single player, a person who enjoys beat 'em ups. Perhaps you want to, I found Street Fighter and Tekken's single player campaigns to be a bit tedious, whereas this one has loads of cutscenes, loads of character involvement, and there's also in Injustice 2 in particular, unlike the other NetherRealm games, there's a gear system where you can unlock a new hat for Batman, or in a particular fight, a new sort of pair of trousers for the Flash, or a new sword for Wonder Woman or whatever. And I have captured some of the item descriptions. So just for I think these are brilliant. By the way, this isn't a criticism. It's just I love it. So this item is Harley Quinn's arms. They're called Durable Gotham Psychiatric Arms, and they grant her 10 extra health, which is obviously fantastic. Good for her. So the Flash torso, a very important part of the Flash.
Yes, obviously.
One would say perhaps the most critical part of the Flash. Solid Bart Allen's Max Speed suit. Who's Solid Bart Allen? Obviously, I by the way, before people mail in, I know a lot of these people are characters in the lore and stuff, but Solid Bart Allen is just the worst Hideo Kojima kind of flex on this. So there's lots of Wonder Woman's legs, reinforced alloys, boots of war. Meaningless. Okay. But the Flash is just the weirdest one. I don't know why the Flash just gets the best ones. Okay, so my second favorite, actually, this might be my most favorite of the Flash. The Flash's items that I've unlocked so far. Lethal Barry's super speed wings, which are little sort of earpieces that he wears. That gives him plus 43 strength, which is obviously marvelous. And actually, my favorite of all of them is a pair of Superman's legs called Lethal Bibbo's blue collar pants.
For God's sake.
Lethal Bibbo's blue collar pants. Plus 47 strength on those ones. And I of course, I did Google it, and Bibbo is a character in the universe. He seems to be a trusty kind of friend to Superman. Why is he lethal? Why is he lethal? Why not solid? Why not solid?
Yeah.
Bibbo. So I've sort of hugely enjoyed this weird architecture of unlocks that exists within the single player progression arc for Injustice 2. Obviously, like I feel as though it fundamentally compromises it as a multiplayer game, because you can't just have a character have extra health. If it's supposed to be like a game of skill where both players are judged on their reaction speeds and their ability to actually perform combos and counter their opponents and understand each character's strengths and weaknesses, you can't just have a pair of trousers that does 47 extra damage. It just doesn't work. But one of the things I like about NetherRealm's games is that they do commit to the single player aspect of things, and that they and as I said previously with it's sometimes fine to let players break the game in single player modes. Like if it's just a self-contained story mode or a series of campaign missions where there's a kind of a progression of unlocks and things that let you get slightly better at defending with your pants, then that's completely fine. But it just feels like it's not a new game, but like they abandoned the multiplayer meta at that point and didn't want it to become a competitive game. And I find that quite refreshing for a fighter. Honestly, like for a beat 'em up, I really like that they are occupying that niche, and I'm really, really looking forward to what NetherRealm do next.
So there is an equipment meta in the multiplayer aspect of the game, or there isn't.
I think you can. I think you like each character has a level. I'm yet to get involved in the multiplayer, and I likely won't. So
Yeah, I
actually,
tried some Guilty Gear multiplayer quite recently, and
yeah,
I was absolutely destroyed by every single fight I went into. So
you're on. Is it Guilty Gear Strive?
it wasn't the most recent one. They released like everything for the previous game just before that game was announced, so you could get like that game and all of its content for a couple of quid, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But I ended up only playing a tiny amount of it because it's a lot, that game.
It is a lot though.
I wasn't prepared for quite how insane those games are.
So the Guilty Gear games are fantastic. Strive is great. I would say that it's one. The difficulty with those games, I wish they were a bit more like NetherRealm games, in that you could play single player through arcade and through individual matches and things like that, and that's really, really fun. And the AI is like really just the right level to be challenging. But I would say that they separate the story off into a separate whole anime series that you could also play within the game, which is, I think, a bit strange.
Oh god, yeah, there's like a whole massive anime movie in that Guilty Gear game. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah,
Like literally a huge like TV season long like epic.
it's hours and hours and hours of stuff. I started it thinking that I'd get to actually do a fight every now and then, but no, it never happened.
You're just watching a movie.
They're just talking. Also, they're just talking absolute nonsense. Like they're just saying phrases that I just don't understand. Like, yeah. So anyway, deeply unsatisfying single player experience in some ways. Even though the Guilty Gear games are excellent, I think they're some of my favorite fighters in terms of the actual the variety of mechanics between each individual fighter, animations, and also visual presentation. Just they're incredible. But
The dude who fights from a bed in
oh,
Guilty
Bedman,
Gear,
yeah.
Bedman. That is one of the most extraordinary creations in video gaming ever. I think it's just there is nothing like that. It is
No,
completely insane.
there's also Faust, who's this evil doctor with a bag over his head,
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah,
and he wields a giant scalpel and opens doors to surgeries that he sucks people into. Absolutely horrendous. It's unbelievable.
yeah, amazing.
Fantastic stuff. I mean, and of course, the main character is called Soul Bad Guy.
Yep, it's pretty
So
good.
fair play. They've won. I don't know what they've won. They've won something. But yeah, it was good. So Injustice 2, I'd say, like, it's been out for a bit too long, I think, to get involved in the competitive aspect of things. But as a single player escapade, if you're looking for something that's like £9 that you could pick up just to play for an hour or so and enjoy the cutscenes and experience some like really, really snappy, nice little fights. I think it's. I still think it's like they've got a great niche, and I endlessly appreciate it.
Who are you maining at the moment in that game? Are you a Batman guy or?
It is the Batman, and I'll be honest. The reason is because the reason I even went back to this series is because of the Batman podcast we did.
Yes.
Just the other week, and I was kind of interested in different depictions of the Batman, and this one is the kind of all-seeing, all-knowing Batman who always has a plan for everything, which is kind of a fun take on.
You wanted to experience firsthand what it felt like to have the power of the bat in your fists.
In my fists, yeah.
While you beat up Wonder Woman.
While I really just kicked the shit out of Swamp Thing, yeah. That is what I wanted to do, and it delivered. So excellent. Great job.
Yeah, I've always liked the look of that game. I do like the idea of. I mean, how did they do the Flash? Because obviously, he's very fast. That's his power. Like, does that play into it, or is it just kind of in the sort of the special move aspect?
So yeah, very much contained in the special move aspect. The thing about the Flash, the thing about Superman as well, is that if you can't actually, you can't actually, realize their powers because they would just destroy anyone instantly because they would just leave. Like the Flash can leave.
Yeah,
like that's always the thing, right? And like he can leave so fast that time reverses. Superman can also do that. Like I think Superman 2, I think he does that, or I can't remember. The Flash it's just a lot of kind of neat visual flourishes where his hands will be a blur, and then your character will freeze, and then you'll be hit 20 times in 30 seconds. That's how they sort of try to reflect it. And also, the Flash isn't such a great character.
No,
he's actually not the strongest. Like he's not better than Batman. Like Batman's pretty good. And
well, I mean, like Batman can punch people really hard. It's impossible to simulate the Flash moving at super speed. So it's hard to imagine, like, if he's not going to do that, what is he going to do?
I think like you just don't want to get into the deepest Reddit threads where you start talking about what metric tonnage the Flash affects when he punches someone moving at his full speed. You just this game is just. Thank you for just not engaging with that.
Absolutely,
and just making them all look cool and be basically competitive.
I was
mostly.
I was flirting with. I had Game Pass for a little while last year. I just had to go at that when I briefly had an Xbox, and I had to go on the most recent Mortal Kombat game. I think the last Mortal Kombat game I played was Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh wow!
in the late 90s or whatever. But I've obviously I've seen it on at parties and stuff like that. It's quite a good party game. But like one thing I really love that they've done, and I don't know how long they've been doing this, is like instead of locking away like the fatalities and all that amazingly like horrifying violence they put into
Yeah.
the game, they'll just give you one of those for free every few fights. So you can just press a button and your character will do the fatality without you having to input anything complicated. And I thought that was a really clever way of like letting people see all that stuff while still making it, if it's something you want to do consistently, you have to learn the inputs. But if you can't be asked to do that, like me, and you just want to play the game for 20 minutes and never again, you still get to see someone pushing a fibia into someone's brain and then sending him into the past like the Terminator does. So what sort of
Yeah.
crazy stuff they do there. Yeah, so I wondered if they do anything like that in Injustice, if they got any of that kind of audacity, kind of crazy level sort of punch card out of space
Super
type
moves.
stuff. Yeah.
Oh, they certainly do. Every character has one, and you don't have to enter a big combo. You just press both of the triggers in on
That's good.
your stick, and it. The trick is if they block, it's really embarrassing because it just bounces off them completely. And to block, one of the reasons I really like this game in particular, I love fighting games where you just have to hold back to block or back down, and that's the dynamic for that. So if you hold back and Batman just goes for his big crazy super attack, he just flumps off you and there's like a really dull thunk, and it's just deeply embarrassing when that happens. It's just like, okay, well, I tried a thing, it didn't quite go off. But if it does hit, he rolls them over, he attaches a tether to their leg, and the balloon pops up and it floats into the sky, into the stratosphere, and then the bat plane comes in and it hooks onto it, sails up in front of the moon to make the bat symbol, and then falls down and shoots him with 2 machine guns. And the final blow is a rocket, and then they slam back into the arena. So yes, in short, yes, that they do have these ridiculous attacks. What I will say about them is that they're actually the Mortal Kombat ones are kind of disturbing and a bit crazy. I think actually, personally, I'm fine with them because I'm used to violent video games, and I know Jamie, you and I have played some Sniper Elite, so with shots of people in X-ray horrible scenes, but it's very similar for those games. Whereas I would say that for Injustice, it is very silly violence in a way that is just not as affecting and not as perhaps disturbing or problematic for like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something problematic about some of the like ridiculous ways in which people are dismembered and destroyed in those Mortal Kombat games. I mean, those games are kind of doing the thing where it's so offensive. I guess what they're kind of going for. I remember watching the end of have you ever seen the Tarantino movie about slavery and cowboys? It's called
Django Unchained. Yes.
Yeah. So in Django Unchained, the ending of Django Unchained, right, where he's like shooting all the slavers and they're just like
gushing out of everyone,
just blood exploding out of everyone to like a ridiculous degree.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't like that movie hugely, but I remember thinking that ending was just glorious because in that kind of even like by Tarantino's standards, you're sort of laughing. For me, you're laughing at how offensively gratuitous it is, and I think that's a very hard thing to get right, because if you get it wrong, then it's just gratuitous and horrible. But if you can sort of pitch it at the right level of gratuity, then I think that can be a lot of fun. And the Mortal Kombat fatalities, you can just watch you can watch a sort of a compilation of them on YouTube, and it really can be quite fun to just think, oh my god, that's just so so upsetting what they've done there. Yeah.
I always feel like I always wonder how much time it takes. I mean, all of this stuff takes loads of development time, but who has to actually sort of administer someone's points of someone's high heels going and bursting someone's eyeballs as a concept, and actually realizing that in
Yeah, because there's no way
perform.
to like blag your way into that job. You have to really, really be good at doing that and at animating things and at representing bodies and stuff like that. Like the artistry in that stuff is just extraordinary, for such like ridiculous purpose as well. It's
Of course, yeah.
yeah, must be hundreds of hours go into those fatalities, thousands. It's amazing.
So I would say that nothing in uh, Injustice 2 is so egregious. It is deeply silly, over the top superhero stuff. All of the things that happen, and I kind of, yeah, I kind of enjoy it more for just being so silly, and also based in the superheroes, which are kind of in their, um, just kind of in their lane in a way. In that, you don't. Batman's not going to rip someone's spine out. You know what I mean? Like that it's a sort of normal space for violence to exist in video games.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think these, if I remember the sort of dating on these right, they kind of slightly predate, or at the very least, harken back to an era where like fighting games could be this, like,
Mm,
and like licensed superhero games could be this. Like they're just going to fight. That's it. We're not doing a big expanded. I mean, I know they have a universe in those games, and you're saying that they have a story and everything like that, but it's a much more like 90s noughties version of something rather than like the expansive sort of multifaceted MCU style take
mm,
on these things. It's um, it's something that I think it can be when if you read comics from the 90s, it's always like, these mutants have been transported to this alien planet and we're going to force them to do battle. It's like the plot of every like 50% of all comic books ever, and like
yeah,
I think there's something, maybe it's just nostalgia for me that I think so fondly on that kind of stuff.
but yeah, it's also interesting to think, what if NetherRealms did a Marvel game? They just probably couldn't do half the things they've done with DC, because DC has set itself up as being perhaps a slightly more gritty setting, or more violent setting in some ways. I guess it depends where. Like, I can't imagine Spider-Man messing someone up in the way that they do in the the NetherRealms DC games.
Yeah, the idea of like some of their superheroes just sort of facing off and punching each other in the head doesn't quite scan. It's not quite on brand for Marvel, is it? Whereas for DC, you can just just about get away with it.
So, Jamie, aside from all that delicious hyperviolence, I hear you've gained a Steam Deck, and I wondered what your experience has been with it.
Yeah, I got one. I managed to kind of be in the first wave of people who got them, so I got mine like March or early April. So I've had it for a month or so now. It's brilliant. I have to say, it is really, really fantastic. I'm not going to take mine out much. But it's really useful to kind of take it around the house, and when you've got kids and stuff, and sitting down on the sofa and having a quick go on it. I think mainly for me, it's the sort of value of it, which is really striking. Like I'm a sort of PC gamer at heart, but I had consoles for years and years and years because PC gaming, it just wasn't viable for me, sort of financially. It was just too expensive to
Right.
sink that money into a gaming PC. I'm a TV writer. Everyone has a MacBook, bar none, and so that had to be, getting a solid, kind of MacBook for
Sure.
using word processing on there kind of had to be my priority. So like for years you can do a bit of Steam gaming on Macs, but increasingly little these as time goes on, and Apple get more and more kind of myopic about it. And I'd also use like cloud gaming servers. I managed to get into the NVIDIA GeForce Now beta, which was really good, and that's what reminded me like how much fun I could have with PC games. So like the Steam Deck was just like, my Switch was starting to show its age, and
Yeah.
my PS4, and I just wanted to kind of be able to get into the next generation of gaming a little bit at least. And the fact that the Steam Deck cheapest model, which is the one I got, is 350 quid, which is an amazing price for what is basically a mid-range gaming
Yeah.
PC. You can spend thousands on these things easily, as you know. So for me, it was just like, as soon as they were announced, I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely what I need. And yeah, it basically just works. You know, there's stuff with their kind of games that there are a few games that don't work or a few games that aren't ideal for it. But to be honest, if you're willing to put up with a bit of jank with those, it's fine. Like I've always wanted to play like Age of Empires 2, and I got that installed on it, and I've been playing that. And you're playing with the trackpads. And Age of Empires 2 has a kind of quite weird and arcane control scheme anyway, which involves like rapid clicking and like hotkeys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But works perfectly fine on the Steam Deck. So to use that as an example, using the trackpads as mice, but then using the kind of customizable back buttons as the hotkeys to go back to your home base or create a new villager and stuff like that. So it's janky, but the jank is made up for by the fact that they've made it easy to customize it, particularly in terms of interface and stuff like that. I played all of Elden Ring on it, and that was fantastic. I've been playing Deep Rock Galactic on it. It plugs into my monitor nicely, with a little USB hub. That basically serves as like a Nintendo Switch dock. And for stuff for roguelikes like Binding of Isaac and Spelunky and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of works. I sort of think they might be onto a real winner with it, to be honest, if they can. I think the price point is really impressive. It feels really nice. It's a big old thing. I mean, when you pick up a Switch after playing with it, it's kind of hilarious because the Switch feels so like quaint and tiny compared to it. It's an absolute beast, but the ergonomics of it and how it's weighted and stuff like that are really clever. So it's not uncomfortable to use or anything like that. And as many have pointed out, like the joysticks are world class. In particular, they just feel really really good to use. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'd say, it's an amazing emulation machine. There's some genius on Reddit who's put out a bit of software called Emu Deck, which you just a little file you download and run, and it just sets your deck up for basically every emulator, and then you just get your legally obtained ROMs and put them on there as well.
Emu's an old touchstone for people who emulate things for sure.
And so it's just it's brilliant. I've been playing some like Dreamcast games, like playing Daytona USA on there, and that's been
amazing,
really really good fun. And also what was the other things I've been like? I always have to get like Castlevania on there and get Symphony of the Night on there and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
And it just looks really nice, and it's very easy to jiggle around the settings and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean it's funny. It's kind of all there is to say about it, really, in that like the more they update the UI and make it a little bit user friendly, the more games that become like playable on it or close to playable on it, the more it just seems like a really wonderful bit of kit. Like just before we spoke today, there's an Epic Game Store sale that just started, and I've been wanting to play Darkest Dungeon 2, which is Epic Game exclusive at the moment, but there's the heroic game launcher which runs through the Linux layer that Steam Deck uses, so you can just download that and then access the game, and it just works straight away out of the box, even though hasn't got any of the sort of Steam customization on it. You can do a little bit of that in the game's launcher itself, and I was just blasting away on Darkest Dungeon 2 just then. And so for me, who's kind of been locked out of that one way or another for quite a long time, it's just a really solid bit of kit, and I'm really really glad I've got one actually, because
it sounds great. So I'm in line for Q3, which should probably end up being like December or whatever. But I went for the higher, like the pricey one, just because I knew I'd like it. But I wondered, like at the very start of the conversation, there you said that you wouldn't necessarily take it out. Is that just because it's fragile or precious, or just curious?
I mean, I probably will at some point. I don't travel much. I mean, no one's been traveling much, have they? No. I think I think for me, it's very big. Like it really is big, and like at my Switch, I could stick in my pocket, and you can literally, you can't put the Steam Deck in your pocket. It's a big old thing you have to take out with you. And I think for like a commute or something like that, it's just a little bit too unwieldy for that. I think for a plane flight, I mean, I can't wait to take a plane flight with it. That's going to be, amazing. I think it's perfect for that, particularly if you can plug it in, because the battery life is not good.
Mm,
But for me, that's fine. It's perfect for me because, you know, just the logistics of having kids means you're often sort of turfed out of rooms or turfed
of
into
course.
rooms, or only have a few minutes to kind of play a game or something. And like I've taken to just leaving mine on what's it called, the game where you downwell. I was like, the game where you fall down a well, downwell. And like leaving it on that, and then just bringing it out of suspend every now and again. So just like on the way back from the loo or whatever to my little office, and playing a few minutes of downwell and then stopping. I mean, you can do that with the Switch as well, of course, but it's nice to have kind of whole library in there to play along with.
Downwell's fantastic, by the way. It's the one of the simplest games you could imagine. It's just purely about falling down and landing on enemies, gaining abilities that let you land on enemies better and bounce onto other enemies until you fall into the deepest level. It's extremely good.
That's
But
good.
I
I can't
wondered if
imagine anyone finishing it. It seems so hard. I like it's
yeah,
got such a like my skill ceiling has met a point on that game where it's just for now it's not moving. I can get to the water level and then I die.
yeah. It's really difficult, but it's extremely good. I played loads of it on my phone, just on just a normal iPhone. I wondered if there were like any other particular games that really worked for you, or any games that kind of you didn't expect to work on a handheld format that
just
did.
just having a look. I've just booted it up.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, okay.
make it be quiet. That's the Darkest Dungeon music. Yeah, Binding of Isaac. That's a lovely one because it kind of has that sort of square level format, so that fits into it really well.
Yeah.
Noita, which is really good. Uh, Again, that was a game like I was desperate to play for years, but I couldn't because it doesn't run on Macs and stuff like that. Sniper Elite, Spelunky is amazing on it. The kind of colors work really well. Elden Ring, of course.
Of course.
Jupiter Hell, the like traditional roguelike. We're hopefully going to do a lock in about traditional roguelikes quite soon. But like
Yeah.
Steam Deck's great for that because the sort of um, pause sort of dynamic of those things, a turn-based thing means you can sort of pop them down and play them again. I've had a great time playing Sniper Elite 4 on it, actually. That's turned out to be a really perfect game for it.
I've been playing that recently. Yeah.
Because that is a game where like every level is is basically made up of you'll hear the little chime as I put this back to sleep. Is it going to go? No, it's not going to do it. Every level is a kind of series of encounters, and so actually the Steam Deck's perfect for that, to kind of boot up, shoot some guys in the testicles, and then sort of put it back down again, and then play another little bit, in the next couple of hours or something like that. But it does work. Their suspend function does work really well, and that means that you can turn sort of any game into a sort of little discrete series of encounters, which is really nice to do. That seems like a bit of a miracle they've pulled off getting that to work.
Yeah, that's like that suspend idea is really appealing. So I'm really looking forward to perhaps even downloading like Hitman, and just if it can suspend and sort of pause and get those autosaves going, just booting it up to have a little wander around.
Yeah, no, I haven't got Hitman 3 yet, and I have played it. I played it on Xbox, but like I had exactly the same thought. Like there's something about being able to pick it up, fire up a AAA game, have a little wander around, like strangle a couple of people and steal their outfits,
Yeah.
and then just turn it off again. For some reason, that's a very attractive proposition. I don't know what it says about us.
Yeah, I think that says perhaps more about us than the product, but I do agree, though. I do agree. I do like that idea, especially because. So I think games like Hitman, they do require, like, if you're gonna go from start to finish in one mission, it's like a 2 to 3 hour endeavor. So this this idea of suspending and pausing and being able to resume immediately where you were, I think is, for people who are time strapped, just the only way you could play those games.
Yeah, and it's interesting because consoles have been doing it for quite a while now, and PC
Yeah.
games haven't.
Mm.
And like, if you get an Xbox now, I briefly bought myself an Xbox Series S last year,
Mm.
which is a lovely little thing actually. I really recommend it, and I only got rid of it when I realised I could still get my sort of Steam Deck. But like the suspend stuff they do on that is amazing. You can have multiple games suspended at once. You can, you can sort of they do incredible things with that to make it really easy to kind of pick up and play really quickly. And PS5 has that amazing like solid state hard drive that means you just sort of turn it on and bing, you're in Elden Ring straight away.
Yeah.
And PC games really been lagging behind on that. So I think the suspend feature on the Steam Deck is a great leap forward for that kind of stuff.
It sounds amazing. I guess it's limited at the moment by stock. So I think I paid like £4 to put a pre-order in for whenever it comes out, and it feels as though it's going to be towards the end of the year when I get it. So it's it's a bit frustrating. I know Valve makes specialist hardware, but it's a bit frustrating that if it's a really good product, it couldn't be more produced more widely available. But
there's some excellent maniacs on Reddit using like really Byzantine techniques to try and work out when theirs are going to arrive.
Right, yeah.
Like precisely in the queue where they came, and sort of hacking into their invoices of that £4 deposit to work out when it can come. I mean, mine is the cheapest model, the one with the 64 gigabyte hard drive, which isn't big enough. It's just not big enough at all. Like after all the stuff that Steam installs on there, you haven't got much more than like 20 or 30 gig to deal with, which is
it
small.
modular though? Could you slot a
so I just got myself a 250 gigabyte SD card, which is only cost like 20 quid off Amazon or whatever, 15 quid, and that solves it. The speed difference is negligible. And so that I had to do that, but that really isn't. There was a bit of a panic when I first got it because I put in a cheapy SD card, and that just caused all sorts of problems. And I thought, oh my god, it's got a faulty, like internet card, or it's because it just wasn't connected to the internet. And then I realized, oh no, it's just like maybe the SD card I've been using in my Switch for like 5 years isn't in the best of health, and I maybe should just get a new one. And that sorted it out immediately.
It does feel as though Valve, like the ethos, I still feel as though they do want other technology to work with their stuff. Like it's not quite open source, but it should accept other technology, and so you should be able to easily introduce an extra sort of hard drive slot. So it's good to hear that that's still the case, as long as you don't get like a terrible one.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that like one of the videos they put out, around the time of when they were announcing it, was like a video of like, here's how you take apart your Steam Deck. Don't do it. It would be stupid to do it, but here's how you do it if you want to, which I guess is kind of a testament to their kind of ethos about it. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the next year develops with it. I think, like I say, I think they deserve to sell a whole bunch of them, to be honest. I think it's a great product, but it'll be interesting to see how much the industry kind of accommodates them. Because when a game gets a little verified green tick on a Steam Deck, to mean it will run perfectly and has been optimized to do so, they always do, apart from Deathloop, which ran like shit. But apart from Deathloop, every game I played, which was verified, ran really, really well. Like Sniper Elite 4 runs like an absolute dream. It's such a wonderful, like, that game is like a solid 7 or possibly 8 out of 10. But like the fact that it's handheld and the fact that it's all optimized for you and all set up with the right settings and everything, and controls and stuff, is just it makes it an 8 out of 10. It makes it a 9 out of 10 if you pay like £4 for it. So it's like for that stuff, it's just perfect, and it'll be interesting to see how much that is taken up, because obviously in order to get that kind of uptake, they need to sell a whole bunch of them, and everyone's waiting in a queue. So it's and lots of those people, I guess, will get annoyed and buy PlayStation 5s and Xbox X's, Series X's and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see how successful they are with it all.
It's great to hear that it has actually worked out, though. Like that it's a good product, and obviously there's huge demand for it. So almost if this fails for Valve in terms of just production lines, or if this doesn't work out, the idea has been proven as a kind of like a really consistent handheld that lets you take your PC library online. That seems like just a great idea to me.
Yeah, and they've open sourced their like Steam OS, operating system for other people to make similar products. So in the future, I mean, I'm sure there's already people around the world trying to work this out, but like, in the future, you would be able to get like a really low spec one which could only play indie, very low, demand graphically demanding indie games or something like that. But for a certain customer, that's going to be perfect. Or for
Yeah.
another one, which an absolute monster beast, which will play everything at the highest settings. And again, that would you can picture a world where these things are modular and customizable a bit more, and people can take their games on the go. With ease. Catered towards them individually a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has any opinions about the Steam Deck, if you have one in your hands and want to contact us, then we are at Crate and Crowbar on Twitter, crateandcrowbar@gmail.com on the email. We would like to hopefully just find new ways to interact with everyone who listens. Whether that means bringing back questions from questions, we're not sure yet. We're still figuring all that stuff out. But I would like to say thank you so much, Jamie, for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And yeah, it's been really fun. And I would say only thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Baby, 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 baby.